was Britain that invented the tank during the First World War, and through various revisions the tank became a major part of land-based offences. However, it's expensive to develop and maintain such a fighting force when there is no major conflict. In September 1939, the British tank fleet was in a bad way. Then after the defeat at Dunkirk, the situation hit rock bottom. A new tank was needed, built from scratch, but early examples were unreliable, slow and unsuccessful. The engineers of Vauxhall Motors re-engineered the tank, now known as the Churchill, and had it on the production line within a year in 1941. The tank still had faults due to the lack of proper testing, but did have a major success in 1941 in the Dieppe raid at the Second Battle of El Alamein. More improvements were developed into the Mark VII Churchill tank, and this was the one that performed so well in the Battle of Normandy in 1944. The success of the Churchill was mainly due to its protection given by its heavy armour, its ability to traverse uneven ground and climb over obstacles. The French were also slow to develop their tanks, and by the time that they had ideas to develop, France had been invaded by Germany. The Americans also learnt from the lessons of the British and the French, and their engineers raced to update their obsolete M3 General Grant tank. And so emerged the M4 Sherman tank as early as 1942. It proved to be reliable, relatively cheap to produce, and available in great numbers. The relative ease of production allowed large numbers of the M4 to be manufactured in America, and significant investment in tank recovery and repair units allowed disabled vehicles to be repaired and returned to service quickly. These factors combined to give the Allies numerical tank superiority in most battles, and many infantry divisions were proved with M4s and tank destroyers.
The Germans also developed a new tank during World War II. This was because at the beginning of 1941 their older tanks were decimated by the formidable T-31 Soviet tank, so the Panzer V Panther tank was developed. The first of these tanks were delivered in early 1944. They were used effectively in open country, but were not good supporting infantry in towns and cities. Military historians still debate about which tank was the best of the Second World War. But for all the polls and spec comparisons, the Panther v Panther is always one of the contenders.
In France, these tanks are on open display and should at all times be respected. Back to the studio.